You could just ask on Google search that, hey, I want to buy this Nike t-shirt, and go ahead and purchase it for me. So it will go to Google products, add it to the cart, and you would have probably given it your access to your credit card, and it will make the order for you, place the order.
So if somebody, let's say in college first or second year, they want to get a remote job.
Yeah.
Alright. So tell me, Shivay, step by step, what places or what steps can be replaced by AI?
So I would say that, hey, I am trying to build a snake and ladders game. Give me a breakdown of the system architecture and the relevant code files. With Bolt.new, Convex, they also help you to create full stack applications. So they will help you to create the database, the backend, the front end, just by a prompt.
Awesome. Welcome, Shivay. How are you?
Yeah, doing really well. Thank you so much, Sanskar. I had a lot of fun being in your podcast last year, and I'm super excited to be again on the show.
Let's keep this conversation for a young 20, 25-year-old boy or a girl who wants to improve their workflow using AI.
Yeah.
Sounds good?
Absolutely.
Perfect. So before we begin, can you just share with the audience short intro about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone, I'm Shivay. I work as a developer experience engineer at Couchbase, and throughout my journey as a software engineer, whether it was kind of starting off my own startup as a founding engineer and CTO at a AI-based company, I have always been around AI. So, back from my journey when I began working with AI in 2019. To building machine learning models, and now of course with the rise of Gen AI agents and LLMs, I'm using them on a day-to-day basis and actually building things with them. So yeah, would love to share about not just from a builder's mindset, but also from someone who deeply appreciates how these particular systems are super useful for anyone. It does not really matter whether you're a programmer or you are an SEO expert. You can just really leverage these LLMs and AI tools to become more productive. So super excited to talk about that.
Just touching upon this, you mentioned that it doesn't matter if you're a programmer or an SEO expert. So tell me, Shivay, why should a young person today in India be using AI?
Yeah, I think one of the main use cases here is that, of course, there is always this debate that when you are young, the main focus should be on learning, right? And I think like that's still the case. But the way that you use AI can really help you and create a huge impact. So whether like let's say you're just someone who is getting started with learning programming. Now, of course, instead of using AI to solve the problems for you, which should not be the case, you could use it as an assistant where it can give you some additional questions. You can think of it as this invisible buddy that you have. For example, if you're trying to reach out to your college professor, they might just be there for during the duration of the entire college timing, but you have this tutor or professor with you that can be there with you at 7 a.m. in the morning or at 12 a.m. in the night. So they're always there to help you. It's just how you use it to become productive, that basically what matters. Now there might be some cases where there is a redundant task which you can automate, right? Because idea really is with these AI tools to automate all of those type of tasks that you don't have to necessarily spend time doing. So for example, if you're learning a new skill, at that time of course you should have complete focus on really getting into the nitty-gritties of learning how that skill works and becoming an expert at that. But there will be certain things in life which you can automate, and AI is the perfect tool for automation, but also as I mentioned earlier, that from a learning capability, it's the perfect tool that can help you master new technologies and give you that kind of that guided path which everyone might not necessarily have. Not everyone can have access to good college seniors or professors, right? So as someone who is trying to learn a new technology, or if we also move outside of technologies, as someone who is probably, as I mentioned, like trying to get into SEO, you can get to learn more nuanced use cases around how to actually manage SEO for a site. You can get some real world scenarios that you can automatically create with the help of AI, and it can help you learn skills. So I think whether you are someone who is technical in nature, or you are probably just learning accountancy or accounting, you can leverage AI to become better at your skill, right? At something that you can get as a real world experience without having access to or having to spend thousands of rupees getting into a professional skill. You can get that with the help of AI.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I'm no expert here, but when you gave the example of AI replacing your college professor, actually, past couple of days I've watched a few reels on Instagram by respected creators, and they mentioned that AI cannot think for itself.
Yeah.
The way you write your prompt, it gives it the inclination and then it just predicts the next word.
Yeah.
Right? So, is it fair to say that trying to learn something from AI, trying to get answers to actual problems from AI might not be right?
You are absolutely correct in that sense, and I honestly didn't mean to suggest that they are a replacement for your college professors. And yes, if you go and dive deeper into the fundamentals of how AI basically works, or the LLMs work, so yes, as you mentioned, that these are transformer based models which will take an input prompt from the user and convert them into these input tokens. And the idea really is just that they are predicting the next set of output tokens, or the output text. So in its way, like, of course, these LLMs are just very basic in nature, right? They will not have access to real world knowledge. If you like, for example, you might have seen that common issue that with ChatGPT, if you ask a question related to who won the IPL 2025, it will say, I don't have access to that information. So that is why we have seen that there have been several improvements to these LLMs over the past few years, whether it's being able to actually access the internet with the help of what we call as a tool call or a function call. So as you know that these LLMs only have the capability to generate text, but if you want them to access the internet, like let's say Google search, or you want them to create an image, you have to give them access to external APIs, external databases, and that can be accomplished with the help of these tool calls. So let's say if you were to ask it that what's the live weather in Delhi, normally it would not have been able to give that answer. But today, with the access to these weather API or Google search, it can actually do that for you. So with keeping that in mind, and capabilities like retrieval augmented generation, so that's a technique that will allow your LLM to get access to real world documents that it has not been originally trained upon. It could be a private document from a company, right? And today we are seeing these particular type of technology trends within LLMs called as deep search, where the idea is that the LLM will go and really take a lot of time into researching a particular topic and iterating over its response. So rather than just giving you a straight away like a random response, it will first, essentially it's like an agentic behavior that we are seeing within LLMs, where it will constantly try to reiterate over its own previous result, and only once it feels that yes, this is a good enough response, then it will actually give a response. So going back to your question about, hey, is it actually, because given the fact that it's just generating or predicting the next set of tokens or words, is it a good replacement? So of course it's not a replacement, but given that you give it enough relevant context. Now in that case, for example, as I quoted an example of it being like a buddy to you for learning, or and of course not as a replacement for your college professor, but let's say you give it access to your college notes, you give it access to the internet, so that it can appropriately look at relevant websites. So that is why like context really matters. The kind of prompt or prompt engineering that you do, so giving it well structured prompts so that it only gives you response when it has that relevant data with it, and rather than hallucinating and giving you an inaccurate result, you properly define what you expect from it and give it the relevant context. Now that could be some of the websites that your college professor probably refers to when they are making their notes, or you give it access to PDF files of your college textbook, right? So when you give that context and you can ground the LLM to give you response only from those many relevant resources, I feel that's when the responses become a lot more accurate. And a lot of people don't know about this. So they just think that, okay, like I'll just go to ChatGPT and I will just give it a prompt and I'll get a response, and more often than not it is inaccurate. So to answer your question, yes, it is not a replacement, but at the same time, the LLMs and the way that the context window, that means how much amount of information that the LLMs can store, right? And with the continuous iteration of them actually having access to the internet, being able to crawl, scrape websites, and ingest all of that information, connecting your LLM with a vector database where they can look at look at relevant information and based on the prompt from the user retrieve that context. I feel the accuracy and the way that you can get structured responses has improved quite considerably. So I would probably say that today, like I use the deep search mode within OpenAI or with Claude, all these different models, and to a certain extent, I would say that 90% of the things that they say is actually correct. Again, considering that you have given them enough context. So yeah, I mean, while you are absolutely correct, I think we have come to a place where yes, they're not a replacement. College professors' jobs is it's still going to be there for a while. They're not getting replaced by AI, but at the same time, it is becoming at least decent enough that I can entrust it to sit every day and spend 30 minutes to actually learn something new, rather than doing Google search and finding out blogs and probably spending another additional 30 minutes to find what to learn. I can confidently spend 30 minutes and use the deep search mode within ChatGPT, and it will give me good, valuable resources that actually helps me aid my learning. And then my further prompt to it would be that, hey, I want you to now give me some additional questions or thought provoking things that I can further learn upon. So I can basically like create an entire map of what I want to learn, right? And it does a fairly good job of actually doing that for me.
It's an interesting point you mentioned. Also, I feel ki if you communicate with ChatGPT, like if you not just treat it like question answer and you communicate with it your thoughts,
Yeah.
then that gives you better responses.
Exactly.
Right? Now, let's say I'm a 20-year-old who wants to get a script for my Instagram reel. I put in a prompt saying, give me an Instagram reel that is engaging, 30-second script talking about this particular topic.
Yeah.
Right? Now, tell me, Shiva, what will happen behind the scenes? And secondly, how can I make the prompt better to get actually perfect and good responses?
Exactly. Yeah. So, of course, when you just give a very rough prompt that, hey, I want to create a Instagram reel about the rise of Claude 4 as an LLM. So, if you just use the most basic primal settings of ChatGPT, it might, the first response might be that, hey, I don't even know whether Claude 4 exists, but let's say you give it the web capability, so it will research on the web what is Claude 4, and it will go ahead and give you a prompt that explains, okay, in an Instagram reel style of content, that it will give you that, okay, Claude 4 has been released and you can try it out now today on the Anthropic website on claude.com. So bunch of you know I'll not, I don't want to call it garbage, but just bunch of text, without actually having relevant context into what is the kind of person you are and what type of I guess language that you use, right? So this is where, of course, as just a basic LLM, that's where the limitations start, right? That it does not have enough context of what's the Sanskar's way of creating a reel, right? But this is where I feel we are able to bridge that gap, by first of all, a like the step 2 would be that if you want it to have a type of language or have a particular type of flavor, what you do is that you will give it examples that, hey, these are the 5 reels that I've created, and this is the type of content that it has. So now, whether it could be just a basic transcript of your Instagram reel, or if you're actually using a multimodal LLM, which have capability to actually also go and analyze an entire video content for you. There are more advanced LLMs, so they could now also look at the type of content, the personality that you bring in, the kind of pauses that you make. You can explain all of that to it, right? You can give it the context that, hey, these are my past reels, and analyze the way that I have structured the content in these reels and help me create a new Instagram reel that follows this type of content strategy. So now it will have that grounded context into that. Yes, Sanskar has the way that Sanskar basically creates these reels. This is the kind of tone that he uses. This is the kind of structure that he creates, and it will give you a much, much better response. Now, one step further into trying to build something even far better would be to create an agent. So this agent will be, again, very similarly, it will use a multimodal LLM and analyze all of your previous reels that you've created in the past, so that eventually over time you can train or fine tune that LLM so that it essentially extends like a second hand to you, or it's like a second brain to you, right? Because it has understood the context of what's your style. So I mean, just repeating that, but now you are just grounding it even further so that it truly analyzes. And this is where we call this as a technology called as fine tuning, where you take the LLM, you give it a set of input output responses, and you can train the model weights in order to be more precisely with what your expectation is. So now you'll see that your responses are 100 times far better. And this is very similar to how recently Google I/O, they showed that how Gemini can analyze the content that you have on your Google Drive or on your Google email. So it will analyze how you have written your emails, how you typically write your emails, and it will be able to draft a response that is having a very similar tone to how you will do it. So it's a very similar approach, but you're now applying it to your Instagram reels. So that would be my suggestion on how to really emphasize the point of uh, giving prompt by giving that context, right? So the context could be within the prompt where you give it some example inputs, and you also give it an example output that, hey, I only want the response in this structure, in this style. So when you give that enough context to the LLM, then yes, it is far better in generating a response that you want.
Initially, you mentioned that AI can help you automate stuff,
Yeah.
right? So for me as a creator, if we expand on this thought of creating reels from Instagram, you mentioned that one should try to build agents,
Yes.
right? So for someone who's again a 20-year-old building these agents, like should they have complete knowledge of coding and languages, or anyone can do this?
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'll first like to just give a very quick introduction to what agents really are, because we have been using the word agents in machine learning and AI even way before we had LLMs come up, right? So at its core, an agentic or an AI agentic system is nothing but a group of, and it could be a single thing, but or like let's say an orchestration of different computer agents that can understand a problem, break it down into smaller steps, iterate over each and every step, and at the same time they will continuously evaluate whether the responses that they're creating from each and every step is it actually accurate or not. So they have the capability to iterate over their responses again and again until they give you a final result, or they are able to finally accomplish a particular task. So again, just as a nutshell, a way for them to get a problem statement, break it down into smaller steps, being able to solve each one of those steps and iterate over their responses until they actually end up solving that business use case or whatever you have defined that agent for, right? So the main idea here is that there are so many different types of tasks, whether we talk about someone working in a business, or it could be as a young 20-year-old kid who wants to do something that involves multiple steps. Now, just a simple LLM would not be able to actually do much for you, right? It's just a simple text generation machine. But with an agent, you can have an agent that can work with multiple tools. So the way that an agent works is that you have an LLM and a set of tools. So the tools are essentially tasks that the agent works with. So a task could be, hey, analyze this Instagram reel for me. So in that case, the agent will use an LLM that will take a set of YouTube videos, or in this case, Instagram reel videos. It will iterate over each one of them, understand what was there, understand, you can give it other instructions such as, okay, analyze this content for me and also understand the behavior traits or traits of the language used, of the content that is actually there in the Instagram reel, and analyze all of that. And it will analyze and store that somewhere. Now, the next agent task could be that, okay, you have understood all of this. Now help me draft a new Instagram reel for me. And it will go ahead and now call up another tool, which is essentially like a text generator tool that will generate that text for you, or that Instagram reel. You could go one step further as well in order to also create some graphics. So let's say that you're creating a new highlight reel about talking about productivity with AI. So if you want some graphics that you want to design, you could have another LLM, again, as part of this agentic workflow, where the first agent did the research. It's understood what you want to, like, your style of writing. Then it instructed the next agent in the line to help draft the content. That agent now uses that draft content to also then create some visuals with the help of a multimodal LLM that has the capability to generate images. Let's say that you wanted a Ghibli style image generator, so you could, in that third agent, it will use OpenAI API to generate a Ghibli style infographics. And finally, it gives you this one final output of, this is my text generated that will be used as the script for the Instagram reel, and these are the set of assets, media assets, that you can now use. Now in the future, this is something that we are seeing right now, which are these computer use type of agents, which actually have the capability to also control your computer, or control your screen, right? So imagine that now you don't even want to hire a video editor for you. So you could essentially add this computer agent now and take it one step further and say that, open up probably Photoshop, not Photoshop, but let's say DaVinci Resolve or any other editing tool, and load these assets in. Use a AI audio generator and generate the voice for me, and use these assets to create the highlight Instagram reel, and it'll actually be able to do that. There are literally tools for people who work in media, or as someone as like you who is a podcaster, that you can actually generate full scale, not like full scale podcast, but at least like these type of reels, because a lot of companies might not have the budget to hire like a social media expert, or even potentially, like, let's say, hire an actor, but they can create these AI generated actors that can also speak, and they look very realistic. So that is the extent. Not we cannot, we are not just stopping at generating the text that follows the way that Sanskar drafts his or her Instagram reel script, but they can also go ahead and create these reels. So it's all about understanding that what the agent can do, because today, and to basically answer your question further, it's whether do you have to learn today coding. But the answer is no. Yes, if you are a programmer, there are tons of different agentic frameworks that you can use, but at the same time, you have a lot of low code, or even not even low code, but no code tools that are out there that help you to create these agents. So an example of that could be not Lang Graph, but Lang Flow. So Lang Flow is this low code tool that is just visually you connect different components, and you connect each one of them from one input to the output, and you create an entire agentic workflow. Similarly, for people who don't necessarily come from a programming background, there are a lot of agents or agent frameworks that can be used by business owners, by students without necessarily having knowledge of Python or TypeScript, and they can build agents and do things like what I described right now. So yeah, I mean, it's like the capabilities with agents is so immense that today, as I mentioned, that they can do a simple task of just text generation, but they can do full scale. I mean, I was completely blown away by this one agent example that was shown at Google I/O, where they showed that how they're adding AI capabilities to Google search. So now with the new search experience that will be launched in a few months' time, you could just ask on Google search that, hey, I want to buy this Nike T-shirt, and go ahead and purchase it for me. So it will go to Google products, add it to the cart, and you would have probably given it your access to your credit card, and it will make the order for you, place the order. So that's the type of agentic behavior we are moving towards.
Actually, on the phone call yesterday, I recall you mentioning something about a YouTube agent you've built,
Yeah,
which basically watches YouTube videos and gives you whole summaries of it. Could you
exactly.
mind sharing about that and showing that to the audience as well?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have it on this laptop, but yeah, the workflow is pretty straightforward. That today, so the way that I built it was basically with this framework called Agno. So it's a Python framework, and as I mentioned, that with agents you have access to these different tools. So it already has a built-in tool which I can probably showcase, which is called as a YouTube summarizer. So you just specify that this is my channel and this is the video that I want to watch, and that particular agent automatically scrapes the entire transcript of the YouTube video, right? And that's probably the most basic way to now to understand this, that you have the agent and it will basically have two separate tools. So the first tool is your YouTube summarizer or transcript extractor, and the other tool is something that can actually generate some text. So your agent one would go to YouTube, use that particular tool that scrapes the entire content, which is the transcript, and it just perhaps analyzes that transcript and removes, some unnecessary things, and only keeps the content which is probably relevant for the blog that you want to create, right? And then it passes on all of that extracted content and synthesized content to this writer agent, which now goes ahead and writes a blog. So to this agent, you would have described, hey, this is the structure of the blog that I want to create. This is the way that I want to create it, and it will go ahead and do that. So yeah, I mean, I would love to basically show an example of, on a very high level, how that would basically end up working. Right now, what you're seeing is this particular tool. So just as context, Agno is a framework that is used to create AI agents in Python. So it already has this particular tool which automatically, so you can see that it's a YouTube tools class. So what it'll do is that as soon as you just give it the channel and the YouTube video URL, it'll automatically just go ahead and scrape the content for you. So this is a function that allows you to get the video data, and it returns things such as the thumbnail, the height, and all of that metadata, but also it is able to get and fetch your captions. So now you can imagine that you can build a tool that will first fetch the captions for you, and you pass it on and generate a blog. So an example of that is, for example, let's say I have this particular blog that I just wrote literally a few days back. So I'll just go to the blog. So I'll go to my dashboard and showcase like an example. So here's an example of essentially using this another framework called Creo AI. But here what I'm basically doing is that it's defining a couple of agents. So in this case, agent number one will retrieve relevant documents from your database. So here it's basically using this vector search tool, and it analyzes some information for you and retrieves that information, and then it passes it on to a technical writer agent. So you can imagine that with YouTube tool, you're just basically, you can replace this research expert with that YouTube one, where you just pass. So instead of so here I'm giving a prompt that I want to research on, let's say, the Star Wars movie. So imagine that you have a database which has the data of all of the different movies that are out there. So it finds that, yes, in your database you had the Star Wars movie, and gives you the description of the movie and all of that. And then it passes on that information to your technical writer agent. But now you can imagine that you will have a tool that takes the YouTube URL from the user. It extracts the caption with the help of this function, internally, like you don't have to do anything, and then it just simply passes that YouTube caption, the entire transcript to this writer agent, and it does that for you. And the way that you'll see is that here, the way that the agent basically works is that it first plans the steps. So it will plan that first I have to do that research. In this case with YouTube, it will be, and I have to plan the YouTube transcript generation. And it will execute it, iterate multiple times, and only once it feels that it is confident, then it will go ahead and now pass on that research that it did to the technical writer agent. Now, similarly, the agent will start executing. It will take some time, iterate over its previous responses, and give you this one final response of that technical writing. So, this is an example of a workflow very similar to one that I described to you over call, that you take a YouTube transcript and generate a blog out of it. So, my use case involves pretty much doing that because the reason is that I am not a natural technical blog writer. Yes, I am a very natural presenter. So I love to present, create PPT slides and present. But someone just suggested to me that hey, okay, I understand that you don't like to write, but you could just use AI for that. So my use case here is that I take all of the rich content of the 50 plus different technical talks that I've given the over the past 4 or 5 years, and I will just simply pass it through this pipeline with this agent, and it will create rough blocks for me. And of course, I don't just simply post the AI generated blogs. Instead of like polluting the internet with these AI generated blogs, I will use that as a reference for what I want to write, and it's a perfect way for now not having to spend hours after hours trying to write that perfect blog, but I get a very good context into how that workflow would look like for me. So yeah, I mean, it's a very simple way to get started, but it just really just eases what I want to do and saves me so much amount of time in trying to do something. And I feel that's the real value of AI agents. That whether you're trying to create a learning experience for yourself, right? Uh, you can build an agent for yourself. So let's say that you're preparing for an exam as a student, and you have all of this learning material with you. Now you could just have an AI agent that takes all of those learning books. So whether it's PDF documents, it's online YouTube videos that your professor has probably recommended to you, that hey, just use all of this content and learn from it, or whether it's probably any other notes that you've taken. So you could just ingest all of that into this agent that will perform YouTube with the help of the YouTube tool. It will use OCR to extract the text from your handwritten notes, and it will put all of that into its context. And now you could ask that hey, the next agent could just help you prepare some cheat sheets. It can help you prepare some technical quizzes that you can use for going over. So you don't need like a buddy that like in college we used to have this thing where you will probably grab someone and ask them that hey, let's try to learn and test each other's knowledge. Well, I mean, if you're learning at the middle of the night and you don't want to disturb someone in your sleep, you have an agent that can do that for you. So like that could be another way to really just help you with the learning aspect, and being like that side gig with you that can give you structured test sheets that you can then use for ensuring that yes, you are well prepared for exam. So that's the main idea, that you don't because some people have this skepticism that hey, it's going to make us dumb. Well, if you don't use it in a proper way, it will actually make you dumb. But at the same time, use it in a more efficient manner such that it does not hinder your natural learning process. The way that I recommend is that if you are trying out something for the first time, think of it in this way, that you still want to learn everything at the core, but you use the AI agents as a helping aid for you, so that it minimizes your time. Probably you don't want to spend too much time writing or creating these cheat sheets. It can create the cheat sheets for you, right? So, and it's very important to emphasize this point, that especially for students, because they might get carried away that, hey, I'm able to do things in record time now. While it's good, but it's important to understand that what are those set of things that you can try to automate with the help of agents, but what are the things that you still want to probably grind DSA. If you talk about someone like from a data structure background, or if like let's say someone is learning digital marketing, they still want to understand the nuances of how the Google's algorithm works on making something more popular than something not, and how the SEO trends, they play an important role in delivering what's the next blog that you should write, or probably what's the next Instagram reel that you should create. Instead of just blindly relying on AI, like I think it's still important to get to know that ground or lay that groundwork, which I think is absolutely essential.
So up until this point, we've talked about AI agents. We've talked about how people not from the coding background
Yeah.
can leverage AI and agents. But now, if we talk about your area of expertise, that is to write code.
Yeah.
Your whole social media presence is about teaching others to write to code, right?
Exactly.
So if somebody, let's say in college, first or second year, they want to get a remote job.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me, Shivaya, step by step, what places or what steps can be replaced by AI or made better efficient by AI?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would also like just talk about some of the tools that I basically use. Now, the first one, and for that, I'll just turn on my internet again. Now, one tool that I really want to kind of emphasize on is this particular tool called Pieces for Developers. So think of it in this way, and I know we were discussing this yesterday as well, that for someone who is either student, working professional, whatever, right? Your workflow is not just limited to your ID. If you think of a typical use case, you'll probably go to Jira, right? So if you like, let's say go to GitHub, you create a new repository on GitHub. Let's say it's just this particular repository. So imagine that you're trying to make a contribution to this particular GitHub repository. Now, you would first start by analyzing the code. Then maybe you will have a discussion with the original author of this particular GitHub repository that, hey, I want to implement this particular feature. So you create a new issue. So I could probably give a better example of an open source repository. So let's say that I open up Kubeflow. So I'll just show an example that you're trying to, let's say, make a contribution to the Kubeflow GitHub repository. So it's a very popular open source repository, and you're trying to, let's say, prepare for Google Summer of Code. You'll see that, okay, there are a bunch of different open source projects. So here you'll come across this particular GitHub issue regarding that particular project. So let's say, as someone who is trying to make a contribution, I go through this particular GitHub repo and the issue, and I don't necessarily understand some aspects. So your next step would be that you would basically open up Slack. You'll go to the Slack for Kubeflow. So here, for example, is the Kubeflow pipeline Slack. So you end up asking your question about the GitHub issue, and you get a response. For example, like here, someone is already asking. So you get that response, and the next step for you would be that now you open up your GitHub repository on your ID, and then you ask a question, right? So the point here is that in this case, what we saw was that there are multiple things involved when we are trying to define a particular workflow, right? As someone who is a student or working professional or an intern, your workflow is not just limited to one tool. So you saw that how my actions over time, starting with analyzing that GitHub issue, moving to the Slack thread in asking my doubt, and then finally moving to my ID, all of those are connected. So today's LLMs or tools like ChatGPT, they are very limited. I can only ask a ChatGPT that, hey, can you help me probably understand this code? But it'll not have context of the explanation that was given by the maintainer of that project on Slack. So you'll have to manually go and put all of that context in. So what we are seeing is that we are seeing these on-device agents that can keep track of your entire workflow. So the idea here is that this particular tool called pieces.app, it takes regular screenshots of your screen, of what you're doing on the screen. So, for example, if I'm going to this particular GitHub issue and I'm analyzing what's there in that particular issue, it will take a screenshot of that and it will use intelligent LLMs that will automatically extract the text with the help of OCR and
What's
save.
OCR?
OCR is optical. OCR is like way to be able to like analyze, like, let's say, an image and extract all of the text from it. So optical character recognition, right? Yeah. So that's OCR. So it'll extract all of or analyze and identify what all text is there, and it will extract all of the text. So now you will save all of that text into a database. But then over time, let's say that it takes a screenshot of my GitHub, then it takes a screenshot of the Slack threads that I've had. It will save all of that, but then it will intelligently analyze that how is the text from that GitHub issue linked or related to the Slack thread that I just had, right? And it will be able to connect the dots and basically create a mental roadmap of what you did throughout the day and the things that you did, how are they interrelated with each other. It's not just like randomly saying, okay, at 10 a.m. you browse the web for Kubeflow and then at 11 a.m. you had a Slack conversation, but it will also intelligently connect the dots that how is that GitHub issues research that you did related to your Slack thread, and then 1 hour later how all of those are related to the GitHub code. So you could basically ask it a question that, hey, based on the suggestion that was given to me by this person on, oh, sorry. Yeah. So, okay. So based on this suggestion that was given to me on Slack, help me implement this code logic in my code, in the in my IDE. So this just saves you so much amount of time trying to fit in all of that context, copy pasting different things. So, for example, here with this pieces, what I'm going to ask it is that, hey, what was the recent Kubeflow issue that I was just looking at? So let's see that, what response it drafts for me. So now, because it has been taking screenshots as I was just showing you the entire workflow, ideally now it will understand that and generate a response based on that. So you can see that it says that based on your recent browser history, you're looking at a Kubeflow issue related to multi-user support for artifact repositories in Kubeflow pipelines. And it also is able to intelligently give me that particular GitHub issue. So you can think of this particular tool as this mental map of whatever you did throughout the day and intelligently giving you answers. So I can probably also ask it a question that, hey, what is the Slack conversation related to Kubeflow pipelines? So now it will actually go ahead and also relate back to that Slack conversation that we had. And
basically, this gives you a revision of what you have done without making notes yourself.
Exactly.
You don't need to make notes and you have everything here.
So see, this time it just tells me here that, hey, it worked on looking at that bug report from this person. And this is a really good example. So right now I'm basically a mentor for Kubeflow. So that's why I showed you an example of Kubeflow. So we have this channel on Slack, which I can just quickly show you. So it's a Slack channel that's only meant for our conversation. So you can see that we had this conversation about the Google Summer Code project, and it was very intelligently able to also recall that particular conversation that we had. So we were talking about, a Slack thread about discussing about some blockers that we had, and this way. So, I mean, this is a very high level overview, but now you can imagine that if I were a student of Google Summer Code or a contributor, and I have also now actually opened up my GitHub, my code editor. So in this case, it could be, I mean, of course, this is not the same code as the one that I'm talking about, but you can imagine that it will intelligently connect all of these dots and answer these type of questions. And you're basically ending up saving potentially a lot of minutes or hours of your time with this type of an agentic workflow that understands what you do and it is able to keep a track of and connect the dots of what you want to do. So now imagine that as a software engineer, as someone who is probably completing an assignment for university, where you're writing code on VS Code. So let's say that you have opened up Cursor and you're writing some code. We'll talk about the Cursor agent shortly, but the idea is that now imagine that you are writing some code here. Let's say that I've opened this chat and this is based on an assignment that I'm supposed to do. So with the help of AI, now you can simply just go ahead and ask it that, hey, don't implement the solution for me, but help me at least break down this assignment question and how may I apply it to my existing code base without making any changes. So it will be able to actually do that for you. So similarly, if you look at as someone who is writing code day and out, and as someone who's probably trying to learn how to write code, using something like this cursor is this ID that, or not ID, but it's a code editor that is a fork of VS Code, and they recently got more than billions of evaluation. So in a matter of just probably 1.5 years. So it's one of the most popular AI code editor that's out there, and they recently launched their agentic mode. So if you see here on my code editor, I can ask it a question that, let's say that I'm new to this GitHub repository and I want to understand, okay, I see that there is this agent code. I want to understand how is this agent code actually working in my code base. So I can ask it this question: can you explain to me how is this agent folder working, and how does the agent actually behave in this React app? So I can ask it direct questions related to my code base, and it will go ahead and not only make me understand, so it analyzes your source code for you, and it gives you a detailed explanation of what those particular code files is, because and it's using agentic behavior, so it is, I don't have to manually give it. So earlier the way was that you have to manually give it the files for it to explain, but now with the help of agents, it essentially, you can think of it that it parses your entire code base. It analyzes that based on the user's request, what are those set of files which closely match the user's given input question, and it uses the workflow now to explain that code for me. So it not only gives me an architectural overview of what that agent does, but it gives me a very detailed explanation, right? So as someone who is learning how to code and is probably their first time interfacing with existing code base, this is a great way to learn, right? Now, of course, I wouldn't, as someone who's learning for the first time, I wouldn't want it to write the code for me, but maybe now I can ask it that, hey, okay, you explained to me that I'm using this agent called as the AI SDK agent, which is using this Google Gemini API. So what if, so I'll ask it that, hey, I wish to implement the AI SDK, but instead of using the Google Gemini API, I wish to use OpenAI API, right? So can you implement it for me? So of course, this is one way to look at it, that if you are trying to build something where it's not necessarily something that you, because you might already know. So you are trying to automate certain things which you don't have to like spend time doing, because essentially if you look at replacement of the LLM, it's just simply this Gemini LLM file that you have to completely replace. And you're not necessarily learning something new out of it. So you can automate that task. So that's, here you can see that it has already started to identify that exact file, and it will automatically make those changes for me inside of the ID. So now it will not only make the changes in the particular code files, but also if you want it to execute some code in the terminal or some commands in the terminal, it will also actually go ahead and do that. So in this case, for example, it fails, but it will automatically suggest me that, okay, you don't have the relevant permissions. Let me try that out with sudo. So now I'll go ahead and give that permission to it. So this is the agentic behavior where it not only just simply spits out code, but it analyzes whether that code works or not. It has the capability to completely run in a browserless environment and execute that code for you. So like that's one way to look at it, right? So of course I'll just probably stop this for now, but it should give you an idea. The other aspect from a learning perspective might have been that, okay, now this is my existing code base, I want to implement authentication in this particular code. So can you give me a suggestion? So let's say I'll ask it, hey, I want to implement authentication with the help of auth 0, let's say, with the help of auth 0. um, can you, without actually implementing the code, suggest how can I accomplish that? So this could be a great way for you to learn, um, that without actually going ahead and implementing, at least it's giving you a very high level thought process, so that now you can begin to think about, yes, this is how I should actually implement. So in this case, you're still not actually, you're not halting, or like, you're not hindering your learning process, but it's probably saving you hours of time trying to go through multiple searches on Google on how to implement authorization or authentication with your, so here it gives you like a proper understanding of what are the kind of things that you will have to do. So not just on a code level, but also on a system level. Because the thing with AI agents is that why all these companies, we saw recently with OpenAI, they released this OpenAI codex. So the idea is that with codex, you define it a problem and it spins up this virtual container and performs all the action for you and also creates a PR for you. So we are moving, yes, we are moving to a place where, let's say in the next few years, people won't actually be writing code that much. But what people will have to rely on is understanding the higher level, that okay, if you're wanting to build a highly scalable application, what is the system design, what is the structure or the architecture that one should use. And we would be the orchestrators, where yes, at the same time we should still be aware of what the code is, that the AI agent is writing, and understand that yes, whether it's accurate enough. So we'll be more of wearing the hat of a solution or a software architect, where we are designing the high level systems that are meant for scalability. So as engineers, we would still need to know good DevOps practices, good high level system engineering, and then we can orchestrate these multiple agents that can probably do more mundane tasks of writing the code for you. So as someone who's learning how to code, this is a great way, right? Whether it's understanding how to understanding like parts of the code base, or maybe you can run the same agent to understand a code GitHub issue better, and then you can use it to generate some code as well, for probably for more mundane tasks that you already know how to implement, but you just want to save time, that we saw. Or if it's something that you want to implement from scratch, you can use that. So for me, as someone who is writing a lot of code and implementing things, I generally switch between tools like pieces that help me give me a mental model of what I've done throughout the entire day, versus something like a code using these inbuilt code editors, and there are so many of them out there, right? Windsurf, I think they were there was a news that they were recently acquired by OpenAI, right? Or using tools like Cursor that are essentially that buddy with me. I don't need to rely on another human for being a pair programmer with me. I can make use of Cursor. Again, is it foolproof? No, not at all. You give it anything more than a decent level task, medium level difficulty, high level difficulty, it will fail. So you still need to have that expertise over the code base that you're trying to write, and always be cautious of the fact that the code being written might actually be completely garbage. It might just be completely useless, and you have spent hours and hours. So what I recommend to someone who's learning how to code is that don't just simply blindly accept all of the code. Use that as a means to actually learn good coding practices. You have this tool at its disposal that has gone through and has access to the world's most well-known GitHub repositories, whether it's React's code. So you can use it as a tool to learn best principles. So potentially, I mean, I can try to ask it that, hey, what is the coding, I guess, or design pattern? What is the design pattern used in the official React GitHub repository? So now you can understand that, okay, you're like, let's say you're just learning the concept of design patterns and software engineering. So because the model that I'm using here, it has been trained upon the official React GitHub repository, it can understand that particular design pattern, and maybe you can use the agent to now understand the design pattern and then write some sample codes that you can only ask it to evaluate and review the code for you. Because there are these different coding agents that can do a complete analysis of your code and give you. So just to kind of give you an example, I'll show you like this particular, let me show you. So here I have this awesome AI apps, and if you look at the current pull request, you have this particular tool called as Code Rabbit. So with Code Rabbit, it automatically gives suggestions on what one should do. So as a human reviewer, I have also given it some suggestions, but it gives you some suggestions that it has automatically said that you should implement these, and now you can automatically accept these changes, or if you want to give it some additional context, you can do that. So going back here, right, I mean, it's still searching because you might imagine that React's official GitHub repository is very large. But yeah, these are the kind of things that, as someone who's learning how to code completely newly, whether it's from the perspective of using multiple resources and condensing them into a single tool, so you can leverage something like pieces, but when you're actually writing the code, you can use these AI agent frameworks that can help make that process a lot faster for you.
Before I ask my next question, quickly I want to know from you. You mentioned that this cursor gives you garbage code as well.
Yeah.
But that will improve with time, right?
Yes, that'll improve with time,
Right.
of course.
So now with AI writing code for you,
Hmm.
and that is just beginning right now.
Yeah.
How does a young software developer learning to code find their own value add? How do they become irreplaceable, so to speak, in the coming future?
Exactly. And see, this is not just a problem with new upcoming software engineers. This is also for engineers who have been working for 10, 15, 20 years. Because let's say that you are a software engineer with 10 years of experience. Today, if you say that, yes, someone who is an intern or is a junior level programmer, some of these agentic applications or agent tools, especially let's say with web dev, might actually be better than an agent, than a junior level programmer. And that is why a lot of companies are actually very open for their engineers to use these tools, because it truly helps you to accelerate the way that you write code, right? So that being said, this does not just apply to someone who is just getting started, but it also applies to someone who is a mid-level engineer, that you always have to constantly learn. So as I mentioned that, yes, in the future, even like 5-6 months down the line, we don't know, because how quickly we are seeing all of these AI agent frameworks accelerating and LLMs are getting better day by day. What I see us as software engineers would be that we are not just writing code, but we are that architect. So someone who is just getting started, they should not just focus on, okay, learning how to write React code, but truly understand that what actually happens behind the scenes. And when they are designing a project, they should look at scalability. So they should know how to deploy their project on, let's say, AWS. Learn the entire product life cycle and try to dive deeper into each and every aspect. Because today, code might be good at writing some React code, but it might not necessarily be good at understanding what are the most well-rounded architectural patterns for writing good React code. Yes, over time it will become better, but you as the engineer should always be one or at least 3 steps further or ahead of the LLMs, and they learn very quickly, right? So the idea is that it's not just being a surface level developer, trying to deep dive and really taking that interest into understanding how things work behind the scenes. Having that kind of a learning mindset is extremely important. And over time, understanding that on a high level, if today I ask you that help me design a WhatsApp like system, right? Truly understanding what actually happens behind the scenes. So the low level design, the high level design, how does WhatsApp actually scale to 2 billion plus users? It's a massive success. So taking out the time to actually learn that, because as I mentioned that we will become more of these orchestrators where we have multiple, you can imagine that we just don't have one single cursor agent, but we have 10-15 different agents all running parallel together, one working on front end, one working on this api, this microservice, one working on creating your database. And you should be aware that what are the different moving pieces, how all of them act and behave, and then finally when it comes to going ahead and building all of it together, being able to then go ahead and publish it. So someone who is new, they should still, it's not that they have to stop now learning DSA just because, or learning front end development just because there will be an AI agent that writes front end, but they should still go through those basics. But now think of this as a challenge that they should not limit their knowledge. They should not just say that, hey, I've finally made a React project and I'm done. No, you're not done. You're literally just scratching the surface. So yes, they'll have to learn more. It will become more competitive, but at the same time they have AI at their disposal to become a better learner, to get access to more assignments, more type of problems that they can solve with the help of these technologies, and broaden their perspective towards technology, right?
Before we end this conversation, I have two questions for you, which can actually help a 20-year-old listening to us today follow some actionable insights.
Yeah.
So I want you to give me shorter answers with actionable steps.
Sure.
Okay. So the first question I have for you is, let's say somebody is a software developer, or not for that matter, but they want to build an app which they want to monetize in the future.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are some apps they can use to build that app from scratch?
Yeah. So there are a bunch of different open source tools as well. So there are things like bolt.new. There is V0 from Vercel. Then if you want to, so these are for building like really nice front end UIs.
Okay.
But with bolt.new, Convex, they also help you to create full stack applications. So they will help you to create the database, the backend, the front end,
Just by prompt?
just via prompt. So just to kind of give you a quick example here, this would be like, so I was experimenting this with this particular tool called same.new. So this is a YC startup. So I was literally asking it that, hey, I really love this particular website. So it's a portfolio website. I was trying to, let's say, trying to make my own portfolio website. So I gave it this prompt that clone this particular website. So what it did was that it ran a browser or a headless browser looking at that particular website, and it was able to create a very similar looking website for me. So in this case, that's just a front end project, but there are tools like Convex that will also create the back end for you. So as someone who is just willing to create the project, the only recommendation is give it good prompts. So this goes back to when we started with having good prompts, not just saying that I want to build this note taking app with a SaaS model, but give it proper features, like break it down as much as possible, give that prompt to the AI agent, and it will be able to build it for you. And now you just have to go ahead and test it and deploy it.
How can they break it down? Let's say they want to build a snakes and ladders game.
Yeah.
So what prompt exactly would you use?
So imagine that they don't even know what the breakdown should be. So what I'll probably give a prompt to the LLM is, and probably we can do that here. So I would ask it that, hey, let me dismiss this. So I would say that, hey, I am trying to build a snake and ladders game. Give me a breakdown of the system architecture and the relevant code files, or in this case it would just actually be the relevant system architecture, because or and the different features that should be there. So in this way, at least they can brainstorm what should be there, because let's say that they're completely blank, right? They want to create an e-commerce store and they're completely blank. So at least here they can understand that what those core features would be. So now they'll be able to design a prompt to the builder LLM that I want to build this particular snake and ladders game with these features, which will have a board, it will have a configuration, and this will give a lot more context to the LLM, and you'll not have to go through tutorial hell, like we talk about tutorial hell. This I call this as an LLM hell of repetitive prompts and still not being able to. So imagine that now you give this as context to your LLM and ask it to build it. Go ahead and it will be able to do its job or its magic.
Awesome. Finally, to end this conversation, if we could talk about some other AI apps you use apart from coding, just to boost your productivity, or any cool thing you've found.
Yeah, I think like one tool that that's completely inseparable. That particular tool is called, and let me find that for you. So the idea is that, again, I don't necessarily like to type the entire day, right? So I use this tool called Whisper. Yeah, so I remembered the name. So it's called Whisperflow. So the idea here is that it essentially just is a voice dictation app, but it's the best voice dictation app. So the idea is that uh, you just hold the function key, and so let's say I want to now ask something, so I'll hold the function key and I'll say it out loud. So I'll say, hey, help me design this new CSS animation for my current website, and I just do that, and it not only just does a translation of my voice to text, but it also adds the relevant grammar. So at times when I'm too tired, I'll just use this, and I'll write my entire email threads, my entire. So it's I don't even need like a Grammarly for this, right? Of course, before the era of LLMs, I would still using Grammarly for correcting my grammar. I'm using this every single day in order to save up time to write. Outside of this, I am deeply using the Google Gemini stack right now. So whether it's like drafting emails or using it to analyze like YouTube and give me suggested YouTube videos to watch, navigate through my hundreds of gigabytes of things that I have in my Google Drive. It's a very intelligent way to search for that exact file that I'm looking for. So I think like at least from a workspace management, I really love the Gemini in Google Workspace. I don't think, yeah, those are the main ones, because apart from that, yes, from time to time I'll just do a regular chat GPT. So for example, I showed you I just wrote this particular article, right? So I'll just do a simple chat GPT where I'll say that, hey, this is my blog post, help me draft a Twitter message that I want to share that I have created this blog. So I would just use those type of like single tasks. But I know that for creators, like tech creators who are there, they have proper agentic tools where they pass in a YouTube video that they've just created, and it will automatically give them content for posting on Instagram, for Twitter, and then it will also actually automatically post it for them. So that type of content creation tools are also really popular. I haven't used it myself, but yes, I just use these typical workflows of, hey, just write the Twitter thread for me, and it'll save me what, 10 minutes of time. But all of that counts, right? So when you add up all of these different type of tasks, not just agentic tasks but LLM tasks, it saves you a lot of time. And again, but with the fact that as someone who's a learner, they should be aware and they should be able to make that differentiation when they should use LLM as a tool to aid, and what is the time when it actually begins to halt their learning process. That's extremely crucial. So I feel that, and at the same time, what are the risks involved with using LLMs? So hallucination and fake information is one thing, but we didn't talk about security. Maybe it might be a thing for another podcast to talk about like LLM security. And for someone who is working on a day-to-day basis with LLMs, when you expose an agent that can replicate your voice and probably make a spam call, and it makes a spam call to an elderly person who thinks it's you, that's where we try to like we see detrimental effects. But probably that's for another podcast.
Probably. Let's hope so.
Yeah.
Awesome, Shivaya. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely. Thanks so much, Sanskar.